There are moments in life that seem so ordinary that we almost ignore them. A message appears on a screen. A sentence catches our attention. A book falls into our hands. A stranger says something that lingers in our thoughts for days. We call these things accidents because our conscious mind is uncomfortable with mystery. It wants everything to have a clear cause, a simple explanation. Yet if you observe your life carefully, you will discover that the most important moments often arrive disguised as coincidences. I want you to ask yourself a question. Why are you here now? Why did these words reach you today and not 6 months ago? Why did you stop, listen, and feel that something in this message was meant specifically for you? Perhaps there are thousands of other videos you could have watched, countless other distractions competing for your attention, and yet something in you remained here. Something within you decided that these words were important. That decision did not arise from logic alone. It came from a deeper place, from a hidden region of your psyche that recognizes meaning long before your conscious mind understands it. The human soul is far wiser than we imagine. Beneath the surface of your everyday thoughts, another process is unfolding. A silent intelligence is constantly arranging experiences, gathering memories, creating connections, and preparing you for transformations that you do not yet see. Long before a great change becomes visible in your outer life, it first begins within. This is why certain messages seem to find you at exactly the right time. They do not create the transformation. They reveal that the transformation has already begun. Perhaps recently you have felt different. Maybe you cannot explain it. You wake up with strange thoughts. Things that once excited you no longer hold your attention. Conversations that once seemed important now feel empty. You find yourself questioning your direction, your relationships, even your identity. A part of you senses that something is ending, but another part cannot yet see what is beginning. These feelings are not random disturbances. They are signals. Before every significant chapter of life, there is a period of inner preparation. It often appears as confusion. It may feel like restlessness or dissatisfaction. Sometimes it even feels like loneliness. Yet these experiences are not signs that something is wrong with you. They are signs that your inner world is reorganizing itself. The seed breaks open before it becomes a tree. The caterpillar dissolves before it becomes a butterfly. And the human being often feels lost before discovering who they truly are. You may think that you found this message because you were bored, curious, or simply passing time. But I ask you to consider another possibility. What if there is a deeper reason? What if your inner self recognized something here that your conscious mind has not yet understood? There are moments when life places symbols before us. A sentence, a dream, an unexpected encounter, a message that appears repeatedly. These events seem small, yet they carry an unusual emotional weight. They make us pause. They awaken something sleeping within us. The rational mind dismisses these experiences as mere coincidence, but the soul does not. The soul understands that meaning often arrives quietly. Think about the most important turning points in your life. Were they announced with certainty? Did they arrive with a clear explanation? Or did they begin with something simple, something you almost ignored? A conversation, a chance meeting, a sudden realization, a single message. Only later did you understand that it marked the beginning of a completely new chapter. Human beings often believe that understanding comes first and transformation comes later. In reality, the opposite is usually true. Life begins to change. Your inner world starts shifting, and only afterward do you understand why everything happened. This is why I tell you not to rush toward explanations. Do not demand immediate answers. Some truths need time before they can be fully seen. You may not understand today why these words feel important. You may not know why you felt compelled to stop and listen. But there is a reason certain ideas reach us at certain moments. The psyche has its own timing, and it never reveals more than we are prepared to receive. Perhaps this message has appeared because something within you is waking up. Perhaps you have reached the end of an old identity. Perhaps you are standing at the threshold of a transformation that has been quietly preparing itself for a long time. And perhaps months from now, you will remember this moment and realize that nothing about it was accidental. You continue with your daily routines, but a subtle dissatisfaction follows you. The things that once brought excitement no longer have the same effect. Certain conversations begin to exhaust you. Certain ambitions lose their importance. You find yourself staring into the distance, asking questions you never asked before. Who am I becoming? Why does my old life no longer fit me? Why do I feel as though something is ending, even though nothing has changed? These questions arise because the soul has already begun its work deep within you. There is a part that always moves toward growth. It cannot remain forever trapped inside an identity that has become too small. It cannot endlessly repeat the same patterns without eventually demanding something more. And when this deeper movement begins, you often experience it as confusion. The old self begins to weaken before the new self is fully formed. This is why transformation often feels uncomfortable. You are no longer who you once were, but you are not yet who you are becoming. You stand between two worlds. Many people become frightened during this period. They think they are losing themselves. They try to force their way back into old habits, old relationships, old versions of themselves because the unknown feels dangerous. Yet, the discomfort they feel is not a sign of failure. It is evidence that something within them refuses to remain asleep. Consider how nature works. A seed remains hidden beneath the earth for a long time. To an observer, nothing seems to be happening. There are no leaves, no branches, no visible signs of life. Yet beneath the surface, an extraordinary process is taking place. The seed is preparing itself for emergence. The human psyche works in much the same way. There are seasons when your greatest growth is invisible. No applause accompanies it. No one notices it. Even you may fail to recognize it. And yet, your inner world is changing. Perhaps recently you have become more reflective. You think about your past more often. Certain memories return unexpectedly. Old wounds suddenly demand attention. You begin questioning beliefs that you once accepted without hesitation. These experiences are not random disturbances. They are signs that your unconscious mind is reorganizing itself. What once remained hidden now seeks expression. What was ignored now wishes to be seen. What was suppressed now asks to be understood. This is why periods of inner change often feel lonely. The people around you may not understand what is happening because they can only see your external life. They cannot see the invisible movements occurring within you. They do not hear the quiet conversations taking place between your conscious mind and the deeper layers of your being. And because this transformation is invisible, you may even doubt it yourself. You may ask, if I am changing, why do I still feel uncertain? Because uncertainty is often the birthplace of transformation. A person who never questions themselves rarely grows. A person who never feels inner conflict rarely discovers new dimensions of their soul. The discomfort you feel may be the evidence that your old identity is no longer sufficient for the life that is calling you. There are moments when your spirit outgrows its former boundaries. You can no longer pretend to be the person you used to be. You can no longer ignore the desires that have awakened within you. You can no longer silence the questions that keep returning. And although this process feels unsettling, it is also sacred because something extraordinary happens when your inner world begins to change. Your perceptions shift. Your values shift. Your relationships shift. Eventually, your entire life begins to reorganize itself around the person you are becoming. But first, everything changes in silence. Because sometimes the message arrives only when the soul is finally ready to hear it. If this message has found you, it may be because something inside you has already begun to change, even if you cannot yet see the evidence of it in your outer life. The most profound transformations rarely announce themselves with noise. They begin in silence, in hidden places within the psyche, where old patterns slowly lose their power and new possibilities quietly take shape. Many people believe that change happens the moment they make a decision, change a job, leave a relationship, or move to a new place. But these visible events are only the final expressions of a process that has been unfolding for much longer. Before your outer world changes, your inner world prepares for it. There is a strange season that many people experience before a significant transformation. It is difficult to explain because nothing appears to be wrong, and yet nothing feels entirely right. Perhaps recently you have experienced this yourself. A relationship changed without warning. A friendship slowly faded. An opportunity you expected never arrived. A door that seemed certain suddenly closed. Maybe you have even felt that parts of your old self are disappearing. The things that once defined you no longer seem to fit. The roles you played for years now feel like clothes that belong to someone else. And because these changes often come unexpectedly, you may ask, why is this happening to me? Why does it feel as though life is taking things away? But there is another question that is rarely asked. What if these things are leaving because they can no longer accompany you where you are going? Human beings have a tendency to remain loyal to old versions of themselves. Even when growth calls us forward, we often remain attached to what is familiar because familiarity creates the illusion of safety. We continue relationships that no longer nourish us. We pursue ambitions that no longer reflect who we are. We hold on to identities once protected us, but now limit us. The soul, however, seeks wholeness, not comfort. And because of this, there are moments when life begins removing what no longer belongs to your deeper path. This process rarely feels pleasant. It can feel like rejection. It can feel like failure. It can feel like abandonment. Yet, many of the experiences that appear to be endings are actually forms of preparation. Imagine carrying a heavy bag filled with stones while trying to climb a mountain. You may insist that every stone is important because you have carried them for so long. But the higher you climb, the more impossible the journey becomes. Eventually, you must let go, not because the stones were worthless, but because they were never meant to be carried forever. In the same way, there are relationships, beliefs, fears, and identities that once served an important purpose in your life. They helped shape you. They taught you lessons. They protected you during earlier chapters of your journey. But every stage of life requires a different version of you, and what once protected you may now prevent your growth. This is why loss often arrives before transformation. Life creates empty spaces, and we fear empty spaces. When a relationship ends, we feel the emptiness. When a dream collapses, we feel the emptiness. When an old identity begins to dissolve, we feel as though we are standing in a vast and unfamiliar landscape. The instinct is to fill that emptiness immediately, to replace what was lost, to return to what was comfortable, to rebuild the old life. But sometimes the emptiness itself is necessary because only in emptiness can something entirely new emerge. A field must be cleared before new seeds can be planted. A room must be emptied before it can be redesigned, and the soul must sometimes release what it has outgrown before it can discover what it truly needs. Perhaps this is why you have felt a strange sense of distance from certain people or places lately. Perhaps you have noticed that some conversations no longer resonate with you. Perhaps you have felt yourself drifting away from ambitions that once seemed essential. Do not be too quick to judge these changes. Your inner world is shifting, and as it changes, your outer world begins to rearrange itself. There is a hidden wisdom in this process. Not everyone is meant to accompany you into every chapter of your life. Not every dream is meant to remain your dream forever. Not every identity is meant to survive your transformation. Some things enter your life to awaken you, some arrive to teach you, and some must leave so that you can continue becoming who you are meant to be. The tragedy is not that things end. The tragedy is when we refuse to let them end. This is why you must not judge your life only by what you can currently see. Some of the most important movements are taking place beneath the surface. Your confusion may be preparation. Your restlessness may be growth. Your sense of disconnection may be the first sign that you are being called toward a different way of living. Perhaps this is why this message has reached you now, because something inside you already knows that the old chapter is ending. And even if your eyes cannot yet see the new path, your soul has already begun walking toward it. There is a painful truth that every human being eventually encounters. Before life gives you something deeper, it often takes something away. We resist this process with all our strength because we believe that loss is proof that things are falling apart. We cling to people, to identities, to dreams and routines because they feel familiar. Yet, there are seasons in life when what is familiar is no longer what is necessary, because then we remain imprisoned by what has already completed its purpose. We keep trying to revive old chapters even though our soul has already turned the page. You may not yet understand why certain things are being removed from your life. You may still grieve what has been lost. You may still search for explanations and wonder why everything feels so uncertain, but often meaning becomes visible only after time has passed. One day you look back and realize that what seemed like rejection was protection. What seemed like failure was redirection. What seemed like loss was the beginning of a deeper alignment with yourself. And perhaps the reason this message has found you today is because you are standing in such a season right now. A season where things are ending. A season where old identities are dissolving. A season where life is quietly creating space for something you cannot yet see. Do not fear the empty spaces. Sometimes what leaves your life is not being taken from you. It is simply making room for the person you are becoming. If parts of your life are falling away, if old identities no longer fit, and if you feel as though you are standing between who you were and who you are becoming, then there is something else you must understand. Transformation does not begin by discovering something outside of yourself. It begins by encountering something within yourself that you have long avoided. Every human being carries hidden rooms within the psyche. There are thoughts we do not wish to think, emotions we do not wish to feel, desires we consider unacceptable, and wounds we hope time will erase. We push these parts of ourselves into darkness because we believe that if we ignore them long enough, they will disappear. But nothing that belongs to the soul truly disappears. What is rejected does not die. It waits. It waits in silence beneath our daily routines and beneath the identities we carefully construct. And then, at certain moments in life, it begins to call to us. Perhaps this has been happening to you. Perhaps old memories have returned unexpectedly. Perhaps emotions you thought were buried have suddenly become intense again. Maybe you find yourself reacting strongly to certain people and do not understand why. Maybe there is anger in you that has never been expressed, sadness that has never been mourned, or dreams that have been abandoned for so long that you barely remember they existed. These experiences are not interruptions. They are invitations. The parts of yourself that you avoid are trying to speak. Most people spend their lives trying to become better while refusing to become whole. They wish to be peaceful, but deny their anger. They wish to feel strong, but deny their fear. They wish to be loved, but hide the parts of themselves they believe are unworthy of love. Yet wholeness cannot be achieved through denial. You cannot become yourself by rejecting half of your own nature. There is a reason certain patterns keep repeating in your life. There is a reason the same kinds of conflicts appear in different forms. There is a reason you are drawn towards certain people and disturbed by others. Often, what you admire or dislike most intensely in others points towards something hidden within yourself. The qualities that provoke strong emotions are frequently mirrors. They reveal aspects of your own being that remain unseen or unaccepted. This realization can be uncomfortable. The human ego prefers simple stories. It wants to believe that all problems exist outside of us. It is easier to blame circumstances, to blame other people, or to believe that our suffering comes entirely from the external world. But true transformation requires courage. It requires the courage to ask difficult questions. What part of myself have I ignored? What truth have I refused to face? What feeling have I been running from? What wound still lives within me? These questions are not meant to condemn you. They are meant to free you, because the hidden parts of the self possess tremendous energy. The emotions you suppress do not disappear. They shape your behavior from the shadows. The fears you avoid quietly influence your decisions. The wounds you refuse to acknowledge often become the invisible architects of your relationships and choices. This is why so many people feel divided within themselves. One part desires change, another part fears it. One part longs for love, another part expects rejection. One part seeks meaning, another part remains trapped in old pain. The inner conflict is exhausting because it consumes enormous amounts of energy. And often, the transformation you seek does not require becoming someone new. It requires becoming honest with who you already are. There is a strange paradox in human life, because then we remain imprisoned by what has already completed its purpose. We keep trying to revive old chapters even though our soul has already turned the page. You may not yet understand why certain things are being removed from your life. You may still grieve what has been lost. You may still search for explanations and wonder why everything feels so uncertain, but often meaning becomes visible only after time has passed. One day you look back and realize that what seemed like rejection was protection. What seemed like failure was redirection. What seemed like loss was the beginning of a deeper alignment with yourself. And perhaps the reason this message has found you today is because you are standing in such a season right now. A season where things are ending. A season where old identities are dissolving. A season where life is quietly creating space for something you cannot yet see. Do not fear the empty spaces. Sometimes what leaves your life is not being taken from you. It is simply making room for the person you are becoming. If parts of your life are falling away, if old identities no longer fit, and if you feel as though you are standing between who you were and who you are becoming, then there is something else you must understand. Transformation does not begin by discovering something outside of yourself. It begins by encountering something within yourself that you have long avoided. Every human being carries hidden rooms within the psyche. There are thoughts we do not wish to think. Emotions we do not wish to feel, desires we consider unacceptable, and wounds we hope time will erase. We push these parts of ourselves into darkness because we believe that if we ignore them long enough, they will disappear. But nothing that belongs to the soul truly disappears. What is rejected does not die. It waits. The parts of ourselves we fear most are often the very parts that contain our greatest potential. Behind anger may be a forgotten sense of worth. Behind fear may be courage waiting to emerge. Behind sadness may be a deep capacity for love. Behind insecurity may be gifts that have never been expressed. But these treasures remain hidden until we are willing to descend into our own depths. This journey is not comfortable. To face yourself honestly is one of the most difficult tasks a human being can undertake. You may discover truths that challenge the image you have carefully built. You may realize that some of your beliefs were born from old wounds. You may see how often fear has shaped your choices. You may even grieve for the person you could have been had you understood these things sooner. Yet this encounter with yourself is sacred because the moment you stop running from your hidden self, something remarkable begins to happen. The divided parts of your being begin to move toward wholeness. You no longer waste energy pretending. You no longer need to fight against your own nature. You begin to understand yourself with greater compassion, and from that understanding comes a new kind of freedom. Perhaps this is why this message has appeared in your life now, not because you need more information, not because you need another distraction, but because there is something within you that is asking to be seen, something you have ignored for too long, something that has been patiently waiting in silence. And the life that is calling you forward cannot begin until you are willing to meet the parts of yourself that have been left behind. Because what you refuse to face within yourself will continue to wait until you are ready to listen. After you have begun to face the hidden parts of yourself, something remarkable starts to happen. The confusion that once seemed meaningless begins to form a pattern. The losses you experienced begin to make sense. The strange restlessness, the feeling that you no longer belong to your old life, the sense that something is quietly changing within you. All of these experiences are not separate events. They are signs that you are being called toward the person you were always meant to become. Most people spend much of their lives trying to become what others expect of them. From an early age, we learn to wear masks. We learn which emotions are acceptable and which should remain hidden. We adopt roles that earn approval. We become the responsible one, the strong one, the successful one, the quiet one, the person everyone can depend upon. Slowly, without realizing it, we begin living according to images that are not entirely our own. And then, one day, something begins to stir within us. A feeling, a longing, a question that refuses to disappear. Is this really who I am? The question can be unsettling because it threatens everything familiar. If you are not the identity you have been protecting for so long, then who are you? If the life you have built no longer reflects your deepest nature, then where do you go from here? These questions often mark the beginning of a profound inner journey. There is within every person a deeper self that seeks expression. It is not concerned with pleasing the world. It is not interested in maintaining false appearances. It desires only one thing: to become fully itself. This inner movement cannot be stopped forever. You may ignore it for years. You may distract yourself with work, obligations, and endless activity. You may convince yourself that your discomfort is temporary, but eventually the call returns. And each time it returns, it becomes more difficult to ignore. Perhaps this is why you have felt different lately. Perhaps you have sensed that your old ambitions no longer satisfy you. Maybe you have begun questioning the path you are on. Maybe there is a quiet voice within you saying that there is more to your life than what you currently see. Do not dismiss that voice. It often speaks softly because it comes from a deeper place than ordinary thought. The journey toward becoming yourself rarely begins with certainty. More often, it begins with unease. You feel drawn toward something you cannot yet define. You sense that a new chapter is approaching, but its shape remains hidden. You know only that remaining the same is no longer possible. This can be frightening. The known world, even if it is unsatisfying, feels safer than the unknown. Yet every meaningful transformation requires a kind of inner courage. The courage to leave behind identities that no longer fit. The courage to disappoint expectations. The courage to walk toward a future that has not yet revealed itself. The opportunity that seemed insignificant. The message that arrived at exactly the right moment. Only afterward do you see how these experiences shaped the person you became. This is why you must be patient with your own journey. Not everything that happens to you is meant to be understood immediately. Some experiences are seeds. They need time before their meaning can emerge. Some lessons require distance. Some truths need silence before they can be recognized. And some moments seem ordinary until one day you realize that they changed the entire direction of your life. Perhaps this very moment is one of those moments. Perhaps you are listening to these words and wondering why they feel strangely familiar. Why something inside you refuses to dismiss them as mere coincidence. You do not need to force an answer. You do not need to understand everything today. There is wisdom in allowing meaning to unfold naturally. The soul often knows before the mind understands. There are moments in life when the soul demands growth, and during those moments, you may feel as though you are standing at the edge of a great mystery. Nothing is fully clear. Nothing is fully secure. And yet something within you knows that you must continue. Many people mistake this period for confusion, but it is often a sign that a deeper intelligence is guiding the process. The old self is dissolving and the new self is slowly emerging. This emergence does not happen all at once. It happens through small realizations. A new interest appears. An old fear loses its power. A conversation changes your perspective. A hidden talent begins to awaken. A dream that once seemed impossible starts calling to you again. Gradually, the pieces begin to gather, and you realize that your life has been moving toward this moment for much longer than you imagined. Even the painful experiences begin to reveal their purpose. The losses taught you what truly matters. The loneliness brought you closer to yourself. The disappointments forced you to question who you had become. Nothing was wasted. Everything was preparing you. The person you are becoming is not a stranger. In truth, it is the most authentic part of you, the part that has been waiting patiently beneath expectations, fears, and old identities. This is why the process often feels both unfamiliar and strangely familiar at the same time. You are not becoming someone else. You are remembering who you have always been, and as this remembrance deepens, you begin to trust yourself in a new way. You no longer need every answer before taking the next step. You no longer require complete certainty. You understand that growth unfolds gradually and that meaning often becomes visible only after the journey has begun. Perhaps that is why this message has found you now. Perhaps you are standing at the threshold of a new chapter. Perhaps your soul has already recognized something that your conscious mind has not yet understood. And perhaps the longing you feel is not a sign that something is missing from your life. It is the quiet call of the person you are meant to become. Because the deepest journey you will ever take is the journey back to your own true self. There is one final truth that you must carry with you, especially if you are standing in a season of uncertainty. Human beings desperately want to understand everything while it is happening. We want explanations for our pain, reasons for our losses, and the clear answers about where our lives are going. We want to know why certain people enter our lives and why others leave. We want to understand why some doors close and why certain dreams seem to disappear just when we need them most. But life rarely reveals its meaning in the present moment. Meaning often arrives later. There are experiences that can only be understood by looking backward. Think of your own life for a moment. There were events that once seemed meaningless, perhaps even cruel. At the time, you resisted them. You questioned them. You may have even believed that your life was falling apart. Yet, years later, when you looked back, you saw something entirely different. You realized that a painful ending protected you from a path that was never yours. You realized that a period of loneliness forced you to discover your own strength. You realized that a disappointment redirected you towards something far more meaningful. And suddenly, what once appeared chaotic began to reveal its hidden order. This is one of the great mysteries of existence. We move through life believing that we are wandering through random events, only to discover later that many of those events were quietly connected. The conversation you almost ignored, the person you nearly never met. Deep within you, something may already sense that a new chapter is approaching. You may not know what it looks like. You may not know when it will fully arrive. But perhaps that subtle feeling within you, that quiet sense that something is changing, is itself the beginning of understanding. There are seasons in life when nothing appears to be happening, and yet everything is changing. You continue with your ordinary routines while unseen transformations take place within you. You question yourself, you release old identities, you face hidden parts of yourself, you begin listening to a deeper voice. And then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, your entire life starts moving in a new direction. One day, you wake up and realize that you are not the same person who began the journey. The things that once frightened you no longer hold the same power. The people who once defined your worth no longer control your sense of self. The dreams that once seemed impossible suddenly feel attainable. And in that moment you understand. You understand why certain losses had to occur. You understand why your old life began to feel empty. You understand why you felt restless, confused, and uncertain. You understand why this season of transformation was necessary. Most importantly, you understand that nothing important was happening against you. It was happening for your growth. The experiences that once seemed disconnected begin to form a pattern like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. What looked like chaos reveals itself as preparation. What looked like delay reveals itself as timing. What looked like an ending reveals itself as a beginning. And then you remember moments like this one, a message, a sentence, a feeling you could not explain. You remember that there was a moment when something within you paused and listened. Perhaps you did not fully understand why. Perhaps you even forgot about it for a while. But later, when the new chapter finally arrived, you looked back and recognized its significance. You realized that your soul had sensed the change before your mind could comprehend it. Perhaps that is what is happening right now. Perhaps this message has reached you because you are standing closer to transformation than you realize. Perhaps the questions you carry are already leading you toward their answers. And perhaps sometime in the future, when your life has taken a shape you cannot yet imagine, you will remember this moment and smile because you will finally understand why this video found you. And you will realize that some encounters are not accidents. They are quiet invitations from the future self that is already waiting for you.